Hi, everyone. Welcome to our event, our joint Intuit Hexagon event. We are going to get started in a few minutes. Super excited to see all of you. And feel free to say hello in the chat. Hi, Rayhan. Hopefully I'm saying your name right. Hello to Pasadena. Hello to Tacoma, Michigan. Oh my goodness. Austin. Hi, I'm also in SF. Wow, I'm so impressed with so many different places our community's from. Maryland. Hey, Boston. I'm from Boston. Hi, Toronto. Hi, San Diego. Hope the people in the Bay Area are, managing in the rain. I know, speaking for myself, it's kind of tough. Wow, from India. Welcome. We're going to get started in just another few minutes. Hi to New York. Ooh, all the way from Canada. Hey, Minneapolis. This is great. So good to have all of you. I think we're still having a few folks trickle in, but sounds like I could probably get started. My name is Ronnie. I'm one of the leads at Hexagon. I'm super excited to be here in our first virtual event of 2021. We've been planning this event with the Intuit folks for a few months here, and super excited to bring this great topic to you. The topic that we have today is words matter, how we can foster anti-racism through the language that we use. First, let me tell you, for those of you who might not be so familiar with Hexagon, what we do. So Hexagon is a community of women and non-binary people who in the field of UX who try to support each other and foster our career growth by sharing our own experiences and just supporting each other generally. Hexagon was founded in 2013 in the Bay Area, but has now spread to, I think, over 20 chapters worldwide. Our mission is, acknowledging that diversity in tech hasn't always been, easy. It's still not easy, and it's just in this day and age, it's become a little bit more at the forefront, the challenges we face. And we want, through our community, for everyone to feel like they can find people like themselves and connect with others and feel supported and know that there are people like you in your field so that you can feel supported to learn and grow. Our community, functioned quite a bit differently prior to COVID. We actually had physical events where you could go and you could meet people and share your stories in person. But for the past year or so, it's been only virtual. We have a big Slack community that you can join if you aren't on there already. And we're hoping to have virtual events like this one. And when the world gets back to normal, we'll be excited to see you in person at our events and all the chapters that we have as well. And if at any point you're interested to learn more about Hexagon or get more involved, feel free to reach out to me, visit our website. We're very excited to be here with you at this event today. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Charisse to introduce the event.
Thank you so much, Ronnie. Well, good morning, good evening, good afternoon to wherever you are in the world. It seems like we have folks, a global audience, so that's amazing. I'd love to see it. So we have a jam-packed hour for you folks. So we're going to start with some quick intros of our panelists. We're going to briefly go over our style guide and more importantly, how it's used. We're going to go over some principles of being anti-racist and inclusive, and we're gonna close it out with some questions from the audience. So get your questions ready. So with that, we'll go into some intros. Who the heck are we? So I am Charisse Daggs. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. I am a senior program manager at Intuit on the diversity, equity, inclusion team. I've been with the company for 7.5 years. And to make it a little bit fun, we thought we'd have an icebreaker. So we came up with, what show have you recently binged? So I'm a little embarrassed to admit, but I just binged Bridgerton. So I'll just say that it started slow, but it got nice and steamy at the end. So
hi, everyone. My name is Caitlyn Halliburton. I am a content designer, and I work specifically on the financial management app Mint. I've been with Intuit for almost 1.5 years, and my pronouns are she and her. The show that I recently binge watched was Unsolved Mysteries, because I love me some true crime. So all my true crime people, give a shout.
Hey, my name is Sarah. I've been at Intuit for about 1.5 years as well. My pronouns are she, her, and I work on the content strategy and systems team. So we're responsible for making sure that the rest of the writers on the team have the tools they need to do their jobs. And I also manage our style guide and our site, contentdesign.intuit.com. It's public, so you can go there, check us out, and that's where our anti-racist principles are. And the last show I watched, I am not embarrassed to admit, was also Bridgerton. So good.
Hi, everyone. My name is Martina Smith. I'm a senior content designer for QuickBooks Live. I've been at Intuit a little bit under 1 year, so still learning a lot, but I love the work that we do. My pronouns are she and her, and the last show that I watched, I was so sad when I finished. It was Selena.
All good shows, all good shows. Okay, great. So let's get started. So before we jump right into the style guide and what we've all been waiting for, I want to ground us in some historical context specific to Intuit. How did we get here? How did we prioritize inclusion? How did we prioritize anti-racist language, right? Well, it started in 2020. Our journey started right after the televised murder of George Floyd. Our CEO, Sasan Gaddarzi, came out and said publicly, I will not be silent on matters of racism and injustice. And from them, he not only created, but also resourced and supported what's called the REAL team, and that stands for the Racial Equity Advancement Leadership Team. And that team was created to immerse themselves in empathy and data and to truly identify a set of priorities to advance racial equity, not only for our employees, but our customers and communities. I am so proud to be a member of the REAL team, and we've been working tirelessly since. So just a few highlights. We hired our first director of racial equity. We hired our first Black female board member. We created a resource center for resources on anti-racist guidelines and things to read and podcasts. We've curated a center where you can go and learn and get up to speed. We had resiliency workshops specifically designed for our Black employees, and we're currently conducting racial equity audits of our internal processes, everything from promotion to mobility, investigations, and pay. So we've been at it for a really, really long time, and we're also in the middle of kicking off racial equity training for the entire company and our contractors as well. So I flashed up the values here to show that this journey has been quick but long and heavy fought, but we've even refreshed our company values. And I want to draw your attention to the stronger together. We explicitly want to call out, as a company who is a very values-driven company, that we are stronger together and we champion diversity and inclusion. So I wanted to ground you in the historical context of where Intuit is as a company, but let's dive deeper in today of the meat and potatoes of this discussion, and let's talk about these amazing women on this panel. I can't say enough great things about them, but first you should know that they didn't ask, no one asked them to do this. They organized organically. They had grassroots efforts to create Intuit's style guide. These women, along with many others who hopefully are also on this call. So I really want to step aside and hear from these trailblazers themselves. I want to jump into what is a style guide, how was it created, and maybe let's go through some lessons learned on the journey.
Yeah, so before we dive into the anti-racist work, I just want to set a little bit of context about content design at Intuit and our style guide. So content design at Intuit sits within the design team. So TurboTax, QuickBooks, Mint, ProConnect, and like all the little different variations within. And many content designers work in the product alongside interaction and visual designers, and they help solve customer problems from the outset. And so I'm quoting our director, Tina O'Shea. She said something the other day that really resonated with me, and it was, language is the most powerful tool we have to form an emotional connection with customers. And, you know, we really build that through the content experiences that we create, not only in the product, but, you know, there are content folks on our teams who work in marketing, who work in customer success, working on the chatbot assistants. You know, these are all vital roles as we think about, you know, the customer journey from start to finish through a content lens. And so the biggest way that we create cohesion with these experiences is with our style guide. And perfect. Yeah, so this is our style guide. Again, contentdesign.intuit.com. You can go there right now if you want. And the purpose of the style guide is really to provide this invisible structure for content folks. So we have everything documented here, from voice and tone for different products, to formatting numbers, to even bigger things like how we deliver bad news. And the goal here is to just provide guardrails so that content people can have the creative freedom to focus on the heart of the message that they're trying to convey without sweating the small stuff like capitalization or where to put the periods in a bulleted list or anything like that. And this also gives designers rationale they might need to back up a content decision. And one section that we've been focusing on a lot this year is accessibility and inclusion. And then Charisse, I think I can dive into some specifics about how the work started. Yeah, okay, so quickly, this work started last summer, like Charisse mentioned. You know, our CEO had made his declaration, and George Floyd was murdered less than a mile from my home. And so for me, I wanted to channel my energy into doing something, but I wasn't really sure what that was. And so there's a content and UX community on Slack, and a group of content folks from all over, led by Andy Welfley from Adobe, they all got together and started talking about racism in technology. And this was really interesting to me as someone who works on a systems team. So everyone started this community spreadsheet where we started documenting harmful words. And that gave us a place to start as far as assessing what might exist at Intuit. And then I quickly learned that I wasn't alone in wanting to address this at Intuit. So I was put in touch with Martina and Caitlyn, another woman, Jennifer Kennedy, and we formed this Tiger team along with Charisse and Jen Schmick.
And then what happened, Sarah? Like, can you give us some examples of some racist terms, where they show up, and why we should even care?
Yeah, I will let Caitlyn and Martina take that.
Sure, thanks, Sarah. So we did a really quick audit, you know, just to gauge how much work we might have ahead of us. Of course, we were wrong, but we just wanted to do a quick audit. And we found that there were problematic, harmful terms across various products, QuickBooks, TurboTax, and in various aspects of the product, like marketing materials, customer success, help, channels, and just within the products themselves. So some of these terms we're going to get into later, but we have whitelist, master admin, and grandfather just to start.
Okay, so first you identified the terms in the product, but what's on the side of these 9 principles? Can we go into some of the principles?
Yeah, sure. So when we first started, we were so excited just to come together and have this energy around improving the culture at Intuit. And so a lot of our work was based in the word list. And so doing a ton of research about the roots and then just figuring out how they were harmful and what communities they impacted. And as soon as we brought this to the larger Intuit community, we realized that our discussion was really focused on just the intellectual perspective, and we weren't taking into account people and how they might be harmed. So we had to pause, take a step back, and think about how did we want to be reflected? And that's really where our principles came in to guide us and help us move forward with a lot of this work.
Yeah, and to add to that, once we realized that we needed to make this more about people, we had to talk to people. So we knew that there are plenty of underrepresented groups here at Intuit who we can talk to and gauge their experiences on what is harmful languages to them and their identities and the groups they identify with. So we reached out to the employee resource groups here at Intuit to get their take. Just for context, there are numerous employee resource groups here at Intuit, including the African American Ancestry Network, the Indigenous People Network, Latinos Network, and the Asian Pacific Network, including many more. So gaining that perspective from them really helped ground us in putting people first and really fully thinking about what this language means across a diverse group of individuals.
Yeah, can I interrupt and I want to address a timely question in the Q&A. So there's a question, did your team conduct any research with Intuit users after making these changes, vocabulary changes?
That's kind of on a team by team basis. And one of our examples, White Glove, which we'll talk about later, they were able to go back and find data that showed that term wasn't as clear. And then also with some of the terms that they wanted to replace White Glove with, they were able to go and see how that resonated with users. So for that specific example, it was a part of the process.
Yeah, so that's actually a great segue to kind of go into some of the terms. The first one is master admin. So as you can see in the examples we just showed, that came up in numerous places. It's really on the back end and the development side that we use this, but we knew that to create the culture we wanted, it didn't matter where we were in product, we wanted to tackle this. So master admin, why is it problematic? Well, using master as a term to identify a primary authority obviously has roots within slavery. And we don't want anyone to have to think about slavery when they're seeing these words. So we knew we had to change it. Also, master admin just means a primary admin. So if we want to stick to our principles of being clear and precise, why not just say primary admin instead? It's so much clearer and it doesn't have any problematic roots. But there were challenges that came up with this because we didn't know who to talk to about making these changes. So that took a lot of searching, and shout out to Jennifer Schmidt for helping us find these teams and finding these developers to reach out to create a plan, which involved some meeting and some coaxing to get them on our side. And hopefully these success stories of starting with QuickBooks will help take up this change to other products like ProConnect and more. And I'm going to pass it off to Martina, who will then go to the next term. Actually, I'm sorry, I am wrong. So master admin actually created a huge impact within the employees, and we thought this was really important to share with you guys, just to see the employee impact. So Gene Austin, a QuickBooks employee, actually reached out to Sasan Goodarzi, our CEO, and told him personally, as a person of color and a descendant of slaves, this master admin title has long troubled me for obvious reasons. So we felt pretty confident that where we were starting was definitely a good start. And now I will pass it off to Martina.
Yeah, and it was for the team just taking a step back for us. It was so powerful to see those kind of moments with our colleagues, and even our customers, because we were pretty much heads down in this work. And so, I mean, we expected it would have a huge impact, but to see those kind of quotes and to see people saying, thank you for doing this work, or just acknowledging that they appreciated what was being done, it just validated what we were doing. So our next example, white glove customized setup, that this word is used within the QuickBooks payroll, and it describes a setup feature. But what came out, so some people alerted us and said, you know, white glove is problematic. And thankfully it wasn't our word list, and a small team came together to kind of figure out how they wanted to tackle this problem. And so while they were looking into this, they found a very compelling data point that less than 50% of the customers who use this product had a clear understanding of what this even meant. So not only did white glove have racist roots that tied to minstrel shows, but it also was very unclear for our customers, creating this confusing experience. So after, what you're seeing here is just the audit that was done to show where is this popping up across our marketing and in products. And so these are all the places where it was identified. And the team that I have to give a shout out to, hopefully she's here, Nicole Baptista, Angela Brown, and a few other people, they came together and really led this effort. And so yesterday we got awesome news that white glove is no longer going to be used, and instead it's going to be replaced with expert setup, which is a huge win, because not only is it more clear, but it also it creates a more inclusive environment for both our colleagues and our customers. So while we just celebrated this huge moment, we do know that there's tons of work. And one thing that quickly happened as soon as we released our word list and the guidelines is other terms kept popping up. And so it was a moment for us to just realize, while we were so excited to be doing this work, we couldn't tackle every word that came our way. So it was important for us to equip our colleagues with the tools necessary to be able to take action on their own.
For example, in our style guide, we provided guiding questions for colleagues to ask themselves, you know, does this language make you uncomfortable, even if you don't really know the reason? Do you think it could be substituted for something clearer, like with this white glove example, expert help? So much clearer. The language is not problematic, it's unbiased. So we definitely took that chance and opportunity of having more colleagues reach out to us with terms to say, hey, like, you can do this too. We're working together as a team, and here are some tools you can use, and here's some guidance you can use to get you there.
Right. This is a great point. I want to address another question. So was this work included in your existing workflow, or was this additional work you took on? Similarly, were your ERGs able to include their contributions in their workday, or was this extra work for them?
Specifically for white glove, I'm glad you asked that question, because no, one of the huge roadblocks is people volunteered. And so because of that, you know, sometimes everyone's busy. It's not always going to be prioritized. But the team kept moving forward, and Nicole did a great job escalating this, because it just turned out, no fault of anyone, that her marketing partner was on a long vacation. But our organization, we have support from our leadership. And so it was not even a full day, Nicole received feedback all the way from the top that we recognize this is a harmful term, and we want to get rid of it. So it takes a lot of work, and, you know, thankfully we have enough people who want to volunteer and step up to the plate to do this.
And shout out to our ERGs. They were the first to offer their support. We got feedback from them. At Intuit, we use the term "follow me home," where sounds really creepy, I know, but it's really just about seeing their lived experience. And that's what we do. This is about empathy, empathetic work. We believe people at their face value. What they say is true. We believe their lived experiences, right? If someone says this is harmful or hurtful, You know, as a Black woman, to see everything associated with Black as bad and everything that's associated with white as good, that doesn't make me feel good when I show up to work every day. Everything from how files are named or emails are sent, or, you know, box folders and all of this with master white, that doesn't make me feel included and part of the team. So definitely shout out to the ERGs who stepped up to share their lived experiences, even when it was difficult, to help contribute to the word list.
I also want to add, to answer this question, this work was not part of our existing workflow. Like, this was a volunteer thing that we all felt very passionate about. So, I mean, I guess you could call it a passion project, but what was great and what I'm really thankful for was that it became part of our workflow. Like, this was incorporated into my everyday as part of my project. So, yeah, thanks, Jen.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that too, to Sarah's point about this being an everyday workflow. Even when we see conversations that are occurring through Slack or on our Figma files and Figma comments, it's just an opportunity to say, hey, we're actually not trying to use that language because it's not inclusive. Here's something else to say instead. And we've gotten overwhelming support for it. Of course, there are some challenges and sometimes there's some misunderstanding, but overall, it is every day is a learning opportunity as long as you seize it.
And we didn't just stop there. We didn't just say, okay, we got a group of words, here we go. Everyone try not to use it. We're done, let's walk away. We're inclusive. We took it further with the style guide, but then there's more ways that we've been tackling anti-racist language. Want to talk about that, Sarah?
Yeah, so after our principles were published and shared within Intuit, a couple of Slack engineers came to us, and they're Intuit Slack engineers. They came to us wanting to build a bot for Global Engineering Days. And that's basically like this week-long jam session where engineers can go off and like create tech solutions around customer problems. And then a lot of this sometimes gets put on future roadmaps. And so originally they came to us, they wanted to build a Slack bot that would flag the 12-ish terms that we had on our word list. But then Jen Schmick on our team had this brilliant idea of going bigger and partnering with Writer, formerly known as Cordoba. And they are an AI writing assistant that we use at Intuit. So they check our language against our style guide. So wherever content designers are working, this tool can basically bring the style guide to them. And Writer already had this fairly robust inclusive language checker built into their product. And so we were able to partner with them to create this bot that basically flags the language in Slack. Like if you're typing a message, it will reply privately and flag any language that might be considered insensitive, and not just around the words that we had listed on our word list, but things around like age and family status, disability, gender identity, sexual orientation, race. And I have some examples that I can show you what that looks like. So with disability and mental health, it'll flag words like crazy, nuts, psycho, demented, brain damage, sanity check, all these words that have become part of our lexicon today. But when you think about them, they really contribute to these negative attitudes about mental health. So it'll just flag it. It's, again, it's private, and it's just like, hey, like think about the words that you're using. And with non-binary and gendered language, things like policeman, mailman, man-made, or even hey guys, it'll flag it, and then where possible, it offers some alternatives. And then it also, of course, flags the things that are on our word list. So blacklist, whitelist, master, grandfathered. And the goal here with this Slack bot is not to be language police or shame people, but to really serve as a learning tool. And that's partly why it replies privately. And so, yeah, I just want to thank Ashish and Wendy if they're listening. They were the devs who built this and really made it what it is today.
And to prove that, we're all learning in this together, even in our core team, we are really trying to have non-gendered language. So how, does anyone want to share how we refer to each other when we say, hey, instead of hey guys,
Peepadoodles.
Peepadoodles, right? Peepadoodles or mew mews. So we're really trying hard. And it's hard because naturally in a meeting, hey guys. But to be more inclusive, it requires self-analysis. It requires grace. It requires doing your best effort, showing up every day, right? So, and I can also personally attest to how awesome the inclusivity bot is on Slack, because it's great that it's private. So it's like, oopsie poopsie. Yes, I can reframe that and actually be more intentional and directed with the language that I use. So let's segue and talk about the effect on Intuit's culture thus far, and what's been some of the reaction.
Yeah, so I think the bot is a really good example of that, because it just shows that people are starting to think about the words they use, not only with customers, like not only the language that customers see in the product, but also with colleagues. Ashish and Wendy came to us because they were worried that they wouldn't be able to remember the words in the word list and that they might accidentally say something harmful. And so the idea is to just get you thinking about the words you use in the everyday conversations that happen on Slack, and have that thinking eventually carry out to the conversations that you have elsewhere. And over time, new habits form. So the words that you used to use all the time will be replaced with other ones.
For me, I have a personal story to share that was great, that highlights really just how this project really helped me show up as my true self at work. So a little after we released our guidelines, I was still writing all of that excitement, and I was in a meeting with the marketing, well, I was debriefing with the marketing partner, and she was just giving me feedback, and it's a moment that every Black woman dreads. Part of her feedback was, you were a little aggressive in how you were accepting the feedback or providing your rationale. So I had a choice. And had I not been on this project, the old me would have totally internalized all of that and been pissed, emotional, not heard anything she was saying afterwards. But this really empowered me to just stand up for myself in that moment and to articulate why that wasn't acceptable to say and just why it was problematic. And so it was a minor moment, but for me, it was so big because I had never done that in my career in corporate America. And it just felt really good to know that I worked at a company where our values really trickled down from the top, and that I was in a safe space where I could make that kind of statement.
And for me, it's helped foster conversations that I never thought I'd have here, that have helped me think more critically about what I'm doing as a writer. So I'm actually going to share a personal story as well, and it does involve Martina. We were actually talking about it earlier. So I had shared an article about some oppression and some things that were going on with the Indigenous community in one of our diversity inclusive channels. And the article was discussing how the Indigenous communities are facing a slew of problems, and they feel overshadowed because at the time there was so much going on with the Black Lives Matter movement. And the article was somewhat angry about it, but I somewhat resonated with it because I was like, yeah, sometimes it's hard for other people to listen. And when I shared the article, Martina Slacked me, and we had a personal conversation about it, where she came and approached me with her concern about her experience and perspective as a Black woman. And I shared my experience and perspective as a brown woman. And, it was just such an illuminating conversation where we both realized, like, we're in this together and we want to be in this together. And the only way that this is going to get better is if we're here supporting each other and, standing up for each other and being each other's voices when maybe one of us can't be the voice. So it was very candid, and it helped me gain a broader understanding of what we're doing and the work that we're doing. So that was definitely such a great moment.
And I love it. I can also share in my role on the diversity, equity, inclusion team. a lot of times teams and leaders will come to us for coaching advice and how to handle this. So it's just another resource. And again, I am so proud of Intuit that I can ladder back to our values as a company. I can ladder back to our CEO support. I can ladder back to, this is a public facing document. We are working on it in product. We are working on it in Slack. It's something that we know not everyone's there. We're all on a journey. You know, being anti-racist corporation, like that's one heart by heart, mind by mind, person by person. But this is just another great resource to share with folks on the journey. So, yeah. So what's next?
Yeah, so I wish that I could say we waved a magic wand and all of the instances of master admin have now been replaced and, you know, all this work is done and we can go on our way. But like, that's not how this work works. So we're still working on master admin. You know, it is the biggest thing because, you know, it exists in the product, it exists in the code. Many different teams own different pieces of code. And so we have been working with teams individually to get this change made. And after we make the change in the product, we are going to work with customer success to make that change in the help content. And then next, we will be working on blacklist and whitelist. You know, that's used in many of our developer systems. And then there's also master and GitHub. So there are like many different pieces. You know, the work is not done, and yeah, there's still much more to be done there.
But there's some more fun work to be done too. Not that this isn't fun, but we're still talking to the ERGs and coordinating events with them, lunch and learns, anything that we can do to get the word out there, to better understand each other, to better understand this cause. So we are actually planning a lunch and learn for next month with our African American Ancestry Network and the Latinos Network that we're really excited for. So we're hoping to keep pushing with events like this and like that to keep the word going.
Well, thank you for, you know, talking a little bit about the journey. It was a long one, and I know it sounded like it was all wonderful and positive, but I'm seeing so many questions in the Q&A around how can others get started? So how can they bring this to their workplaces, teams, and their work?
Yeah, so this first point is one that I feel really passionate about. Don't wait to be assigned something. Try to avoid the mindset of, I see that this is a problem, but that's not my job. You know, so many of us are so busy doing our everyday work that it's really easy to get tunnel vision or to just assume that like someone else is gonna take care of this. But the time is now to do this work, and you all are the people who can do it. And I also just want to calling out white folks here because there's a lot of work that we have to do. There's a lot of learning, a lot of unlearning. And, you know, for me, sometimes I felt nervous or like worried about getting it wrong or making a mistake. And I have done that, but learning from that is part of the process. And so don't wait to feel like you have to get it down perfect because A, that won't happen anytime soon, and B, that's how racist systems stay in place. So perfection is the enemy of progress, and that, I think that's a Winston Churchill quote. So don't wait to do the work, just do it now.
And don't be afraid to get everyone involved. We've told stories about our conversations and interactions with our colleagues. And you need to be transparent in those conversations, just like the anecdote that Martina and I shared. And then also just to think critically about the language you use. Ask yourself questions. Is it clear? Is there any underlying tones there that can be easily solved with a different change of word?
And you really have to get comfortable being uncomfortable. No one shows up at work and thinks, I want to talk about race today. Like, that's probably the last thing any of us want to talk about. There were moments when I first started this project where I just sat in silence. I knew in my gut it didn't feel right, but I just didn't want to say anything because I didn't trust the people who I was with because I didn't know anyone yet. And so, but going through this process and just seeing how putting myself out there allowed me to grow and really made a difference for this project, it was all the proof that I needed that instead of second guessing, you just have to push through those uncomfortable moments because it's impactful and it makes a difference.
And not to be all Oprah inspiring, but know that you can make a difference. I mean, I can't reiterate enough that this started as a scrappy team of like 2 handfuls of people. I think I remember our first meeting, we had like one Google Doc with some names on it, and then it evolved, and then we had a forum, and then we got leadership support, and then we got alignment, and then we kind of took 2 steps forward, 5 steps back. So just start anywhere, and I really hope that just because this problem seems so big and so huge and you don't even know where to start, and it seems so systemic, like who am I to go to Intuit, a huge Fortune 500 company, and be like, actually we should think differently about racist terms in our product and how we operate. And look where we are now, and that's in a matter of months. So even though it may seem daunting, or why me, like you're the why that we've been waiting for. So it can be possible. And I also want us to get really real. This was a ton of hard fought work. It was a ton of getting no's. I wouldn't say we got the doors slammed in our face. It was just kind of like, okay, that's cute, but maybe not now. That was more likely the answer, as opposed to like, I can't get on board with it, or that's great, we can't prioritize this right now because it's not on our workflow. So just know that it's a ton of hard work, and I really want to be respectful and hear from the audience and hear from all of you. So we're going to open it up for some questions.
Maybe we can start. There's one related question to what you just said, Charisse. There are many people that work at companies where leadership isn't actually pushing for these values. How can you help move the company's values in the right direction?
Yeah, I can take this one. So first, you got to know who your allies and champions and supporters are. I kind of like to see as an organization in thirds, and it's not mathematical 30, 30, 33%, but there's going to be parts of the organization that are like, yes, let's bust down the patriarchy. Let's be anti-racist. Let's go, right? Then there's going to be the people in the middle that are like, oh, okay, I don't want to be a jerk about it, but I kind of need some more convincing. Show me the data. I don't know, sorta, kinda. And then there's people at the end that are just vehemently like, no. Why are we talking about Black people? Why are we talking about minorities? Like, this doesn't even belong in the workplace. I'm annoyed, right? So when you're struggling to get people on board, index for the top 2, like the top tier, right? Know who your supporters are, know who your allies are, know within the company, like who are those VPs and above that, I hate to say higher, status, but who has that clout to go to higher up executives to say, this is really important. Also show data of the impact it has, show impact data of the empathy and the harm that it causes. And if all else fails, all companies care about their brand and reputation. So it's like, do we want to be that person in the New York Times that's super racist? Like, that's not going to be great for our branding. That's not going to be great for reputation, hiring. So be prepared to, unfortunately, make the business case for being anti-racist, as crazy as that sounds. So that was a really long-winded way of saying, optimize for the people who are already your supporters, and they will become the cheerleaders for the people at the end.
That's an awesome answer. There's some more related questions to that too. What types of resistance did you actually encounter in this? And then what was the most frustrating part of this experience, maybe for each of you?
Okay. There was one, I think one thing that I have learned on this project is that not everyone is on the same path. And there are some people who are really against this work. And so there were some comments in Slack of people who felt like we we were being racist against white people, which doesn't exist. And the comment in particular that was in Slack, I think Charisse has talked about this, and Charisse says it more eloquently than I do, but someone made a comment, and where many, like my first reaction was anger, and actually what we saw from our colleagues at Intuit was empathy. And so people were taking the time to educate this person, give them resources as to like why saying white privilege is not racist. And that was a really great learning opportunity for me, that to be empathetic of everyone and to realize that not everyone is on the same path, but yet like we are staying true to our values, and we did not, like, we weren't changing that language. I don't know if anyone else wants to add to that.
A moment of frustration for me, it was more internal. I felt like I had to come to this work really knowing how to school people, and that just wasn't my role. Like, I'm not an Afro-Am professor, and as a Black woman, I just felt that burden weighing on my shoulders. So I think a lot of the times that's why I was quiet. But how lucky was I to have Charisse in this work, and she really coached me and taught me how to be constructive and how to just articulate myself clearly without making me feel embarrassed about not knowing how to do it. So, but in the beginning, I was down on myself a lot about that.
Cool. Thanks for sharing that. Maybe a question about your process. You spoke a little bit about this, but do you have any recommendations on how to start the actual content audit to make sure that your company is using inclusive language?
Yeah, so Intuit is a huge company. There's a ton of products. There's no way that we could exhaustively audit everything. And so one place that I started in was just asking people. I asked product content designers, like, hey, like, do you know if any of these terms exist on anything that you're working on? And it's actually one of my colleagues, James, who was like, yeah, master admin. Like, he's the one who pointed out master admin. And so that was helpful. And then honestly, I would just like go into the product and poke around. I used search on our website, and I just searched the terms and saw what came up. And usually that can give you a pretty good place to start. But I'd say, you know, part of one of the items of like how to get started is to just get everyone involved. And we just asked a ton of people for help. We don't know the answers. We didn't have a map or a way, like we didn't know the exact way to get this stuff done. So we just asked a bunch of people, and if they don't know the answer, maybe they know someone who has the answer. So that's how we started.
Yeah, and coming from an app perspective, since Mint is mostly run through mobile, a good way to poke around, because we just redesigned Mint and launched our redesign, was to just go through the Figma files and really see what was going on and talk to certain team members who had a good handle on what was there. So it definitely, like Sarah said, is talking to people and then poking around as much as you can.
I love this. It's like super humble approach. You know, even in your process here, you're like, obviously we don't know. We're going to ask everybody. That's like great advice. We got a lot of love in the chat when you were talking about the Slack bot. There's a question here that says, do you think you'll publish a Slack bot for other companies to use?
That is a great question. I don't know the answer. That would be great. I'd love if that were the case. I'll have to talk to the engineers.
Cool. Maybe related to that, is there a plan for maintaining these guidelines and the bot long-term? Like, is it integrated into all of your processes?
Yeah, so for the bot in particular, our team manages the language part of it. And so, this is an ongoing effort. Again, it's not like a project that you just do in like a couple quarters and then you're on to the next thing. This is something that's going to be at least on my plate for a while. And yeah, so we manage that on the back end. And then, as more terms get added, we can add those in Writer. And then Writer is also evolving their inclusive language guidelines. And so that API automatically gets brought into the bot. So yeah, we will be maintaining it on an ongoing basis. And then what was the other part of the question? I forgot.
Maintaining guidelines and the Slack bot.
Yeah, I think as far as our just the guidelines in general, we definitely want to expand for this track of work, at least for this first part of the project. We hewed pretty closely to anti-Black words and words that were harmful there. But there's, like Caitlyn mentioned, we're doing more work with ERGs and really hoping to expand those inclusive guidelines to include more than just anti-Black.
This is another question. Is there any plans to expand outside of English?
I'll answer that because I work closely with the ERGs. So thanks, Farah, for asking that question. Yes, and that's part of the reason why we wanted to reach out to the ERGs, because this is a global company and we have offices all over the world. For now, a lot of our products operate in English, but it would definitely be helpful to understand how anti-racist guidelines can apply to other cultures, not just on the Intuit scale, but just in general, as these conversations push forward through our society. So yes, there is a plan. It is not in action yet, but we're getting there.
Cool. One question from Tina. Did the pandemic help or hinder your efforts? And did you have any more data or insights on what was most persuasive for making your case?
I think the pandemic helped because I would not have been able to work as closely with Martina and Caitlyn and Charisse and Jennifer Kennedy and all the people on this team because we're not all in the same office. So I think just being on Zoom and being able to work with teams that you normally wouldn't work with, I think it's been nice.
And I hate to say it, but the pandemic really shed a lot of light on ugly things that are going on in our country. So had George Floyd not been murdered, had protests not been happening, had these conversations not trickled into work, would this be prioritized by our leadership? I don't know. So I do have to say from that standpoint that it did accelerate and generate a lot of momentum.
And I think that to add on to the second part of the question around what was the most persuasive, it was so easy to walk into a room and, not to be a name dropper, but it's like, well, Sasan prioritized this and everyone knows about the Real Team and how we're leaning into racial equity. So you want to be the tool that's talking about, you want to keep these racist terms, right? So I will say this was a young, scrappy, grassroots team, but operationally and at the company level, we had support from the top. And our employees had a consistent drumbeat of hearing these messages that the company is going to prioritize it. So to be really honest, if anyone that we went to shouldn't have been surprised. And I think most of the resistance came in form of delay of like, okay, that's cute, but not right now, right?
It sounds like everybody was pretty open to making the changes you suggested. Is that right?
Yeah. We had some haters in Slack, but what else?
Of course. Looking back at all of this, what was the most surprising insight?
The most surprising in a refreshing way was just the level of empathy and understanding for the work. I was expecting a lot of resistance and Charisse jokes like it wasn't just all yeses, but from my standpoint, I was like, wow, this is being received really well. And I was just I don't know, I was expecting a lot of hate to come or just confusion about why this was even important to talk about at work.
Yeah, that's great. A related question from Kelly. Do you have any recommendations on facilitating conversations about race and inclusivity in the workplace?
Yeah, so I feel like that's half my job. And I would say start with a common language. Talking about race and equity is so hard. It's so uncomfortable. I mean, I want to say 18 months ago, we would never dream about talking about white supremacy, anti-racist. Like, this is all new. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I had to look up the term what anti-racist meant. So it's hard, right? So we need to equip people with a common language and a foundation of these words and what we mean. But we also need to be rooted deeply in empathy. We tell people all the time, like, I'm not going to spend time with anybody if you're not teachable, reachable, and ready. Meaning, like, I'll take someone who's ready to learn, who's ready to have an open heart and open ears to hear a different perspective, and then we can engage in constructive conversation. If you're not teachable, reachable, and ready, you're a waste of my time. You're a waste of anyone's time who's trying to further this work. So yeah, going back to it's rooted in empathy. We do not deny anyone's lived experience. We are here to hear and trust and believe people at what they say, and we give them a common language and a framework to build on, and we coach and let people know that we're going to fumble. It's going to feel uncomfortable. Like, what could be more uncomfortable than talking about like race issues, right? Like, that's really uncomfortable. But reminding people and role modeling that's okay. You're going to fumble your way through it. And also, lastly, I'd share, like, we're not going to make any progress if we do nothing. If we do absolutely nothing, we are not going to move the needle. If we really want to live up to our values, if we want to live up to our mission of powering prosperity around the world, it takes action. It takes analysis. We have to show up every single day, and we're going to fail on a lot of those days, but all the days that we're winning is going to add up to progress and change. So,
What an empowering statement. Like, I feel energized now.
teachable, reachable, and ready, Ronnie.
Yeah, that's so good. Teachable, reachable, and ready. It points out how important your audience is in order to make the change too. It's like, it's not all on you. You can only do what you can do. A few more questions. Maybe a question from Savannah. Do you have advice on how to cultivate a culture of empathy in the workplace or to make it a company value?
I feel like I'm answering all these. Yeah, so I would say our ERGs are on fire. And I am the first to admit 5 years ago, I only joined the ERGs that I thought I belonged to. Like, okay, women, check, Black people, check, right? And I just thought I wasn't welcome, but boy, was I wrong. I am a part of every single ERG, from our Arab ERG to our Pride to our, Christian, everything. And that builds so much empathy because they come out with, they're partners to our business. They have excellent programming. They have excellent events. They build a strong sense of community, and it's growing and growing and growing over the years. And I would say COVID has really brought our global ERGs together. They first were organized by location. So I would say lean into your ERGs because they tend to be the most passionate, and they're highly visible, and hopefully they're resourced. So all of that helps bring like empathy starts with awareness. You can't begin to do analysis and action until you have awareness. And I think that's a great place that's safe, where you can really learn out loud and build authentic connections to have that foundation of empathy.
I'd love to add to that, Charisse, because I feel like the ERGs is also a great start. And then also just in your day-to-day workplace is being able to show up and not being afraid to be yourself and to have vulnerable moments with your colleagues. Something simple as, guys, I'm not feeling it today. I'm off. I know, I'm sorry. And then, receiving that empathy in return as much as you're giving it. Is what makes it easy. When I say on a Figma comment, hey, we're actually not going to use the term white glove. And they're like, oh, okay, let me go tell this person, this person, and this person. So definitely the people you work with day to day, being able to be yourself and being able and receiving others being their authentic selves in return is what like fosters that on your day-to-day work.
It's a great answer. Last question. What are you going to do next? This is so great. Everyone's excited to hear what are you doing next?
That's a great question. I mean, we're going to keep doing this work internally into it, but we would love to turn this into we'd love to keep everyone apprised of how it's going and share the things we learned. So I don't know, maybe there's a conference in the future.
Yeah, definitely. And having, more lunch and learns with different ERGs and employees across Intuit, and also reaching out to other ERGs for more, like Sarah said earlier, like not just anti-Black, but even more underrepresented groups. So.
That's awesome. Well, thank you everyone for joining us here today. A huge thank you to our great panelists for this like super interesting talk. I know that I learned a lot, and I'm really glad that we were able to partner with Intuit folks to bring you all this event today. Please feel free to reach out to me if anyone has any more questions about Hexagon or this event, or has ideas for partnerships in the future, or wants to get involved, wants to volunteer. Happy to hear any and all ideas from all of you. Thanks so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Hexagon. Thanks for having us.
Thank you, everyone. So much fun.
You.